Hello? You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it.
What's that? Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.
Get out there, play hard, enjoy those games.
Happy March Madness, everybody. This is Go Big or Go Home. I'm Old Man Troy, joined by the marvelous, and I really do mean marvelous youngster, Kevin Cunningham, a.k.a. Kid Cunny on Twitter. Getting up early on a Monday morning after Selection Sunday. We're recording on the Interpeak Coffee virtual studio line. How you doing on this beautiful, beautiful early morning, youngster?
I'm good. My voice, by the way, for this show, my voice, has to, I just kind of got up like less than 10 minutes ago. So my voice is going to get better, and it's not going to be as groggy as the show goes on. Because I just
as long as you don't sound depressed.
Right, that's the main key. No, I'm definitely not depressed. That's for sure. Because this is, to me, this is one of, if not the most exciting times of the year for me, because I just know that this coming weekend is going to be phenomenal. And I'm just going to take it all in. And, some days, if that means 12 hours straight of basketball, then that's what it's going to be. So I am very excited. Whether I sound like it right now or not, I am very excited. So, yes. It just depends really on the day. Like for me this week, a lot of just kind of giving the fans a bit of a glimpse into our schedule this week. We weren't sure how we were going to do our shows this week because of March Madness and if we wanted to do one big show. But just based on schedule times for our work schedules, for me in particular, there's just no way for us to record at a different time. So going to have to get up earlier on my end. Again, sometimes I work at 4 in the morning. Sometimes I work at 2 p.m. And this week is one of those days where I close a bunch at work. So just getting up early to record the podcast. Then I'll be up because I don't really nap, but it is what it is. So I'm excited. I'm ready to dive into this tournament. I've done my homework on the one region we're going to talk about today, the West region, the Gonzaga region. But, yeah, this is a Big Ten show, so we'll talk all things Big Ten, but primarily we're going to just kind of wrap a bow on the Big Ten tournament this week, or on this show, and just give a quick look at what the tournament looks like for the Big Ten holistically, and then get into the West region, which, again, has Gonzaga as the 1 seed. And the only Big Ten team in there is Iowa, the 2 seed, but we'll get into that in a bit. Troy, how are you?
Well, another day. It's a Monday. Another day. As you can tell, I'm always chipper at 5 in the morning, but I'm usually on my way to work at 5 in the morning every day. So this is nothing new to me. This is just, actually, though, going to make my ride to work a little more enjoyable because the loyal listeners know I record usually during my commute to and from work, just because it's an hour long. Easy to do the show. And I love doing that. So now my drive to work every morning will be a bit more enjoyable. But let's get into it, youngster, on the Interpeak Coffee studio line. Big Ten record, 9 teams. 9 teams in the NCAA tournament, Big Ten record. Tournament was very competitive on the last 2 days. You and I went through our predictions. Mine didn't pan out how I thought. Yours, your boys down in Illinois, you said they weren't going to lose again. Well, so far so good. So far. But yeah, 9 teams, youngster. Let's go over them. Let everybody know where they're seated.
Yeah, I just want to quickly, Big Ten tournament. I'm just looking at it now, seeing if there's anything crazy we should go over early on. I don't think there was anything. Again, like you said, we weren't perfect. Not that most people picking every single game in a conference tournament are going to be perfect. But we got the big 4 teams throughout this year. These 4 teams were kind of separate. from the others. Purdue had a nice year and probably a better year than most people predicted, but throughout the season, Michigan, Ohio State, Illinois, Iowa, those four really stood out. They made it to the semifinals. Ohio State pulled an upset over Michigan, and Ohio State, took Illinois to overtime. So Ohio State had a really nice run, and that's probably what I will say that Ohio State, like the worst 2 seed, typically gets matched up, well, especially this year because there is no travel, which we'll get into as well. But so Iowa was kind of rated as the lowest 2 seed. Why is that? Because they got matched up with the highest 1 seed, which is Gonzaga. Some people, can think that Baylor's the best team. Some people, like me, can think Illinois is the best team. Some people can think, some random 3 seed is. But how the NCAA usually does it, the selection committee, is they go with the best 1 seed, they get the worst 2 seed as kind of their, prize. At the same time, the best 3 seed goes in there, so it's kind of like a snake curve, kind of like a fantasy draft. If you've ever participated in fantasy sports and done a draft like that, it kind of goes in an S formation. So the worst 1 seed gets the best 2 seed. Anyway, the Big Ten tournament, it was phenomenal as you went on. They were just great games. But nothing crazy to get into. The one thing I was curious about the Big Ten tournament was injuries, and Iowa had Wieskamp coming off an injury going into this tournament, and he looked fine, which was great to see. And then Michigan had Eli Brooks coming off an injury, and he was playing in this tournament as well. So that's something as a Big Ten co-host of a show I was really looking to see, because I didn't want those injuries to affect those teams come the NCAA tournament, and it looks like it's not going to. So I believe, as far as I know, all these teams are at least as healthy going into the NCAA tournament as they were going into the Big Ten tournament, which I think is phenomenal. I might be missing something, but at least as far as major players are concerned, I don't think there was anything crazy to derail any of these teams going into late March. So
I am surprised that Brooks played, though, youngster. I talked about it last week on the show, and I thought if I was Juwan Howard that I would rest him. You were pretty much solidified as a number 1 seed, and then you got to win in the tournament. I wouldn't have taken that chance. It worked out. The gamble paid off. No further injury, but you never know. You don't know what can happen. As a former coach, some of those things have to go in the back of your head. Like, we're pretty much after that 1 win in the Big Ten tournament, that solidified the number 1 seed. That second game, they ended up losing. I don't know if I would have seen him on the court. Just rest the guy. What is that game going to do for him? Maybe get him into a little more conditioning, get him back a little bit more from that injury. I don't know, but I wouldn't have played him. That was my only thing, is I was surprised that he played. That's all I have from that. Yeah,
I would agree there.
What did you think about the Juwan Howard debacle there, youngster? What were your thoughts on that?
I didn't understand that. Juwan Howard got pissed off at Mark Turgeon, I guess supposedly, according to what I've read, that Juwan Howard was pissed at a call, and so he was basically yelling at a ref across the court, and it was in Mark Turgeon's direction. And Turgeon said, what did he say? I don't remember what he said. I think that he was kind of going back and forth with Howard, and he basically, I don't know why Turgeon said this, reportedly, said that I'm not going to have you talk to me. You're not going to talk to me. It's like, oh, what are you talking about? Like, if what I read was true, then Juwan Howard was just PO'd at a call. He wasn't going at Mark Turgeon. Now, was he realistically? I don't know. I wasn't, I don't know. But, supposedly Juwan Howard wanted to run after him, and what that does, I don't know. I don't know if he's ready to punch Mark Turgeon in the face. I don't know if he's ready to just scream at him 1 inch from his face. Regardless, it's ridiculous for a head coach to act like that, in my opinion. In a Big Ten tournament, I just think it's stupid. It doesn't do anything. You're not backing your players by wanting to storm at another team's coach. That's just, to me, it's idiotic. Whether you want to do it or not, it's just something you have to restrain yourself from doing. Troy, I don't know if you've ever stormed at another coach and wanted to, or did punch another coach during a game, or,
No, I never went fisticuffs with another coach, youngster. Never laid down the knuckles. So I'll lay it in from my perspective as a coach, and I've been in a number of games where you just get fiery about the other coach because the old, I'm a little older, but the common term when I was coaching is the Bush League. Like, that's really minor league. That's like Bush League. You shouldn't be doing stuff like that. So I was in a number of those games, but like you said, what is it going to accomplish? What is it going to accomplish for me running over to a coach, getting in his face, wanting to lay down, wanting to fight during a game, or even after a game? There is no – people want to say you got to stand up for your team, you want to stand up for your player. Well, what is that going to do other than getting me out of my game plan, getting me frustrated, getting me worked up, and now emotionally I'm deciding things in a game based off hatred of another coach. So I was in a number of games where I was mad at the other coach, and I just shake my head, and you got to push it away, and you got to look at the heat of the moment. What am I going to accomplish right now at this point in the middle of a game? And especially in a soccer game, you can't call a timeout. You got to keep playing. So why would I cause that distraction? Now, I'll say I've had some very colorful conversations with coaches after a game or on the phone in my office later in the week, but never on the field. I would never do that because if I start doing that, guess what my players are going to do, youngster? Now they're going to retaliate against the other team while they're playing, and it's just going to be a fiasco. Just going to be a big fiasco. But I've been in situations where I disliked what the other coach did intentionally, but I never started it on the field. I may have said some quick words on the field in a sarcastic type way, but never to the point of wanting to storm the other bench. All right, carry on. We want to keep the show moving along. But it was story time again. You like my stories.
I do. The one game in this tournament that I think really affected things, because going into the Big Ten tournament, we figured there'd be 2 1 seeds, 2 2 seeds coming out of it, which ended up happening. The one game that really affected things was Michigan State, Maryland, in the second round, and Maryland won that game. And I was saying going into the Big Ten tournament, I'm not sure how solidified Maryland was. Obviously, Maryland won that game and solidified themselves. They got a 10 seed. But the point being that Maryland, Michigan State were pretty close in terms of where the selection committee thought they were, because Michigan State lost that game. They were one and done. They didn't win a game in the Big Ten tournament. And now they're in the play-in game. So they're not even in the 64-team field as it is. They're in the 68-team field. They have to play their way just to get into the first round, quote unquote. So that was the biggie, I think, as far as a game that truly affected seeding. Obviously, if Maryland wins another game, they could have been a 9. If Ohio State win the Big Ten
youngster, though, I think if Michigan State wins that game, I think Maryland's out. I don't think Maryland's in the play-in game. I really don't. I think if Maryland would have lost that game, I don't think they would have been in the 68-team field. I think they would have been left out.
Well, maybe. Yeah. So, we'll never know. But there's 4
we won't know.
Standby. There's 4 teams on standby just in case COVID things pop up, which hopefully it does not. My one scare for this tournament is that a team somehow magically test positive for COVID on Friday once they're there, and they're among a bunch of different teams practicing and in the hotel, and then it just ends up being a mass chaos for 12 different teams because of contact tracing, and maybe this guy has to and things get delayed, and it turns into a big fiasco. That's my number one scare for this tournament. But so far,
well, youngster, I don't believe, as long as these kids are following the protocol, you look at what the NBA did, and it's kind of mini bubbles for the NCAA tournament. And if the NCAA follows what the NBA does as they were in the bubble, once they were in the bubble, things were okay. It's getting them into the bubble and making sure that these kids understand the protocol. Again, you got 18 to 23-year-olds. They can get a little bit antsy. They may not follow the protocol to a T. That's what scares me. Not necessarily what the NCAA has laid down as to what they need to do. It's the kids themselves. Are they going to maintain the protocol? That's the biggie. All right, let's carry on, youngster. Let's look at the teams that are seeded for the Big Ten. And, kind of we talked about it a little bit before we got on the air. Two regions with 3, a region with 2, and then, bam, a region with 1. And there's no travel involved unless you're talking about the west side of the state, the north side, the south side, and the east side. I mean, that's your region. There's no big travel involved, so I don't know why they didn't even out the brackets. But, again, it's the selection committee. Who knows what they're thinking? But take it away, youngster. 9 teams from the Big Ten in the tournament.
Yeah, quickly, I do agree with your point there. It doesn't make sense the way they have it laid out there. But I am glad, I will say, that, the 2 1 seeds from the Big Ten, the 2 2 seeds are all in 4 different regions. So that's at least a plus. You're not worrying about Michigan playing Ohio State in the Elite Eight. You're not worried about Illinois playing Ohio State, Illinois playing Iowa, whatever, until you get to the Final Four, which I think is awesome. But I'm with you. It could have been done better. So 9 Big Ten teams. Again, it's a Big Ten record. It's also the first time ever that 2 1 seeds and 2 2 seeds from the same conference are in the same tournament. That's, it just goes to show how good at the top the Big Ten was. And then again, no other conference had more than 7 teams except the Big Ten, who had 9. So even depth showed that the Big Ten was the best conference there as well. So if there's any dispute, I mean, you can make the case, I guess, at the end, if 1 Big Ten team's in the Final Four and 2 Big 12 teams are in and the Big 12 team wins the whole thing, then there will obviously be an argument. But I think going into this tournament, it's pretty obvious who the big dog is, and I think any analyst would tell you the same thing. They have been saying the same thing.
Not Doug Gottlieb. Not Doug Gottlieb.
If you're a former Big 12 player, then you've got things to say about the Big 12. But
yeah, I was listening to Big Ten basketball. He was announcing, he was flat out asked during the game, and I believe it was the Northwestern game, I think. I can't remember the game, youngster. He was flat out asked on the broadcast by his co-host that the Big Ten is the best conference in the land, and he disagreed. He disagreed. Doug Gottlieb disagreed. So he does not agree with us that the Big Ten is the best. But everybody's entitled to their own opinion. Take it away, youngster.
So the 9 Big Ten teams that got in, we'll go through that very quickly, and then we'll actually get into the West region, which is what this show is designed for. But it's the first time we're able to talk about this tournament, recap the Big Ten tournament. So we had to get through some things before getting into these regions. The next few shows that we do the next few days, leading up to the first tip-off, technically on Thursday, is when those first 4 games happen. But Friday is when the true first round happens. But so we'll go through each of the regions every morning, and we'll get these shows out, and we'll tweet them out. We'll promote them. So, again, follow us on Twitter at YoungsterOldMan. Follow Troy on LinkedIn. Do whatever you need to do. Facebook. Troy pushes a lot of different avenues for these shows. So, you can find them all on thegruelingtruth.com as well. So, anyway.
And then go check out our sponsor. Make sure they check out our sponsor, Interpeak Coffee. It's very simple. Their website, interpeakcoffee.com, because I definitely will have my coffee brewing every show this week, youngster. So check out our sponsor, interpeakcoffee.com. Free delivery right to your doorstep, gourmet coffee thank you, Interpeak, for sponsoring our show. Take it away, youngster.
Yeah, shout out Interpeak. So 2 1 seeds, Illinois and Michigan. No surprise there. Obviously, Illinois won the Big Ten tournament, so well-deserved. Michigan was, I guess you could say, quote-unquote, struggling down the stretch, I suppose, by losing 2 games after they started, I don't know what it was, 18-1, I think. But so Michigan's shown that they're beatable over the last couple weeks. But over the whole body of work, Michigan got a 1 seed. 2 seeds, Ohio State and Iowa, obviously. Got nothing more to say there. Purdue is a 4 seed. I'm sure that Purdue fans are happy with that. I think going into the season, if you would have said Purdue's going to be a 4 seed, I think any Purdue fan would have signed up for that. I would have been surprised by that. I think Troy would have been surprised by that. They overplayed, they outplayed expectation for sure this year. After those 5, so to me there's obviously a drop-off after the 1s and 2 seed to Purdue. But even in the Big Ten tournament, like Purdue showed that they could certainly hang with Ohio State. They had Ohio State right there. But Ohio State got past them barely. Ohio State almost choked that away. They almost choked the Michigan win away as well. And then they almost forced Illinois to choke, so to say. But, Ohio State had a very interesting Big Ten tournament. But then after Purdue, you look down and it's like, okay, who's next from the Big Ten? And you have Wisconsin, who has certainly struggled down the stretch, and you go from a 4 seed in Purdue down to a 9 seed in Wisconsin. So there's not there's a fairly big disparity there. And then after Wisconsin, you have Maryland as a 10. You have Rutgers as a 10, which, by the way, Troy, shout out to Rutgers, and actually getting into the NCAA tournament. On this show, we will finally talk about Rutgers.
Been a long time coming. I was on the Rutgers bandwagon since the day we started this show. Way to go, Rutgers. Way to go, Rutgers. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. Shout out to Steve Pickiel, their head coach. They've obviously turned their program around for sure these last few years. And Brad Underwood at Illinois, when he took over, they were – his first year, Illinois went into the Big Ten tournament as a 13 seed. And a few years later, they're winning the Big Ten. They're a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. So he's done a fantastic job. I figured he would. The only question we had when he came over from Oklahoma State was he was kind of a guard-heavy coach in the past, and that still held true. That still holds true for Illinois today, that they're guard-heavy. They just have Coburn in the middle. So you recruit 1 solid big guy, and you can get away with, being quote-unquote guard-heavy and having 4 really good guards, 5 good guards that you can use. But you need to have some sort of a big if you're going to truly do big things in March, and obviously Illinois has that. So he's done a great job getting a big that you can rely on, and Illinois has got another one as well. But he was able to not say, we're just going to go small ball, we're just going to have a bunch of guards, we're just going to outrun everybody in the Big Ten. He knows he has to recruit size. He's not an idiot. So shout out to those 2 coaches, Pickiel and Underwood, the jobs they've done. Certainly you can tell this March what Rutgers and Illinois have done as opposed to the last few years. So shout out to those teams. And then after Maryland and Rutgers is 10 seeds, again, Michigan State's an 11, but they're not even technically set for the first round yet because, again, they have to play a first 4 game against UCLA, another 11 seed, just to see who plays BYU, a 6 seed, in the first round. So Michigan State plays Thursday, but we'll get more into that when we get to that region. But unless you got more, Troy, we can finally get into our first region here, the West region.
No, take it away. Bracket time to pick your brackets.
Yes. By the way, I created a tournament challenge on ESPN. All you have to do is click the link. If you go to Twitter at youngsteroldman, I tweeted it out. I'm not sure, Troy, if you were able to retweet it yet on the other channels. But regardless, you can go to youngsteroldman whenever you're listening to the show. I'm sure it'll be up. You just click on the link. It's a free, public bracket. You join, you enter your bracket. Ta-da! You're in our little tournament challenge. We'll certainly give a shout-out to who wins at the end, at the least. But, so, yeah, join our free tournament bracket challenge over at ESPN. Just, if you're submitting a bracket, you might as well click the link and import your bracket there. It takes, less than 20 seconds. So, anyway, Midwest region, the West region. Gonzaga's the 1 seed there. Iowa is the 2. And again, this is the one region that has one Big Ten team in it. So Iowa is the lone Big Ten team here. Just to give a little context, Gonzaga the 1, Iowa the 2, Kansas the 3, Virginia the 4. What's interesting about that is that Gonzaga played all these teams during the regular season. People always say that Gonzaga doesn't play anybody. And while that's kind of true in the West Coast Conference almost always gets 2 teams in, Gonzaga and somebody else. Usually it's St. Mary's. This year it was BYU. So Gonzaga rarely gets tested in the West Coast Conference. There's always like 2 teams that are at least tournament worthy, and another team usually gets in. But non-conference-wise, Gonzaga always pushes themselves because they know they have to. And so Gonzaga this year, they played Iowa. They beat them. They played Kansas. They beat them. They played Virginia. They beat them. So Gonzaga, again, they're 26-0. They play from a quote-unquote garbage conference that nobody really knows about. Nobody ever watches. But they played Kansas, and they scored 102 points on them. The game after that, they played Auburn and scored 90. The game after that, they played West Virginia and scored 87. They tried to play Baylor, but that game got canceled. They played Iowa, their first game back. Gonzaga did. They scored 99 points on Iowa. They played Virginia. Everyone knows about Virginia's defense. A few games later, they scored 98 points against Virginia. So you can say that, Gonzaga, they're undefeated. Everyone's, thinking this is a great Gonzaga team, just like they always do. Gonzaga's a 1 seed. They never win the whole thing. Gonzaga, West Coast Conference, they never play anybody. It's not true. And while during their conference, they're rarely tested, that's true. But outside of that, this Gonzaga team is for real. They're scoring 100 on real teams. They're scoring 98 against Virginia for a reason. They were up 20 against Iowa in the second half when they played this year for a reason. Gonzaga's really good. They have a top 5 pick as their point guard. They have a big who is, you could argue, better than Luka Garza in terms of being on the block, which is very impressive because Luka Garza is almost unstoppable on the block. They've got a guy in Timmy who's phenomenal. And then neither of those 2 guys actually won their best, the MVP for their conference this year. Kispert is actually the best player, according to the conference. He won the most valuable player. Point being, Gonzaga is very, very, very good. Their top 5 guys are all very good. They've got 1 guy off the bench, maybe 2, that you can really look at. That's the one knock on Gonzaga is once you get past their starting 5, then you can certainly start poking holes. But their starting 5 is really, really, really good. And again, they've got multiple NBA players on their team. They've got a top 5 point guard in terms of an NBA draft pick this year. He's certainly a one and done.
Youngster, why do people want to hate on Gonzaga? So they got to say, well, after their solid starting 5, I'll tell you what, every team would die to have the starting 5 they have.
Yeah.
You go to any college team and you tell me who has a solid 5 that you can't poke after their starting lineup. I mean, why do people hate on Gonzaga so much? Because they play on the West Coast, and yes, they play in a crappy conference, but everything you've said, look at their non-conference schedule every year. They are not afraid to play the top 10. And they hang in there. This year they're beating them. They're knocking down almost 100. But I read that all the time. It's like, this Gonzaga team, this. After their starting 5, their bench play. You know what? Whose bench is great in the tournament?
Right.
I mean, just let's be real. If this is not the NBA. You mentioned Underwood in Illinois. Yeah, he likes his guards, but you have to have a big man in college basketball, unlike the NBA, where you can fly up and down the court. and then you have a couple guys off the bench that can drop 20 on you. That's the NBA. In college, you want your starting fives basically to get 80% of your scoring. If you are relying on your bench in college, you're in trouble. You are in deep trouble if you get to your bench. I'm not saying there's not good players, but these teams are built for their starting five to dominate the game. So I'm tired of the Gonzaga haters. They haven't lost a game. The only thing that has caused them trouble all year is COVID. So you got me all worked up going off on Gonzaga and letting me listen to you. Oh, my God, I'm tired of the Gonzaga haters. I'm not saying I'm picking them to win it all. You'll find out. But, man, give the team some respect. Jeez.
Yeah.
All right, carry on.
They averaged 92 points per game this year, which is number one in college basketball. And, again, they played Virginia, scored 98, played Iowa, scored 99, played Kansas, scored 102, played West Virginia, scored 87. So outside of those games, they actually averaged less. They actually averaged fewer points per game in their conference, as opposed to playing those big dogs. They scored less points per game, just to give some context. So, yeah, Gonzaga's for real. They'll never stop having haters until they win the whole thing. Like Virginia and their style, you can bash Virginia. Virginia lost to a 16 seed. Nobody took Virginia seriously again until they actually went through and won the whole thing. Then it's like, oh, okay. Now Tony Bennett's a good coach. Now Virginia, you can win that way. It's all, Gonzaga's got to a championship game. They lost that championship game a few years ago. But until they win it, they'll always have their haters, just based on what they are. So, anyway. All
right. Carry on, youngster.
Yes, to start going through Iowa's little road here. They're a 2 seed. They play Grand Canyon, who's a 15 seed. You might not know who Grand Canyon is, and understandable because they've never been in the NCAA tournament. So
you want a little side note, youngster?
Sure.
Little side note? I worked for Grand Canyon University for about 8 months.
Oh, did you?
I was a recruiter in job transitions after I was at ITT and before I went to NHS Human Services. I was a recruiter, an educational recruiter for Grand Canyon remotely. I actually visited the campus twice during my 8 months, and it's a beautiful campus out in Arizona. In Arizona.
Oh, okay.
And their stadium, they have a beautiful, do truly on campus, put a lot of money into their athletics. It's a beautiful campus. So just a side note, I don't think you knew that I actually worked for Grand Canyon for 8 months. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't think they're going to get by mighty Iowa, but good for Grand Canyon and the Lopes, as they're called. I actually have T-shirts. Maybe I should find one, take a picture, and put it on Twitter.
You should. Right before tip-off. Just at Iowa basketball, at, all Iowa basketball fans, you just repping a Antelope shirt. That'd be good. Anyway, so Iowa Grand Canyon in the first round. I did, I always do my homework come this time of the year because I am a big nerd when it comes to March Madness. Grand Canyon, again, this is the first ever time in the tournament. They went 4-3 in their last 7 games. They only had to win 2 games in their conference tournament to win it. Again, I believe part of that is due to COVID, but I didn't look too far into it. The only tournament team they played this year was Colorado, which I believe is a 5 seed. They lost Colorado by 10 points, so they didn't get dominated. As far as the roster is concerned, they have a 7-foot senior center, who's probably their best player. They also have a 6'10" guy who scores their second most points on their team. So they're not this team that's going to just get completely overwhelmed by Garza. Garza could still have 25 and 10. But my point here is that Iowa's not going against a team who's just from this terrible conference and they barely got in and it's their first time in and it's a bunch of, 5'8" guys. It's not going to be, some teams are like that in the NCAA tournament because, again, you win your conference tournament, you're automatically in. So some of these 16 seeds, some of these 15 seeds just clearly look like they don't belong. But Grand Canyon, they have size. They have seniors to match up with Garza on the inside. They have 7-footers. So it's not going to be an absolute – again, Iowa could win by 30, but it's not as though Iowa's just playing against these little kids. That's not what it's going to look like, just to give people a perspective there. There's some other seniors Grand Canyon has. So, again, this is not a team that's just going to wilt and bow down to Iowa because they have Garza and they're an older team because, again, Grand Canyon's got some age to them as well, so to say. But holistically, Iowa should get past Grand Canyon without much of a problem. There's no real reason to think they wouldn't. So the winner of that game plays Oregon and VCU. Oregon's the 7 seed, VCU's the 10. Both these teams, I was kind of looking at them, and from a rebounds per game standpoint, both of them are very bad. I looked at their roster, their top rebounders. I looked at their key contributors. There's not too much size. I mean, there's guys that, 6'6", 6'8", but even size-wise, they don't have the size that Grand Canyon has. Obviously, they have better guards, better wings, with more skill. That's why they're a 7 seed, a 10 seed, as opposed to a 15. But size-wise, Oregon doesn't have much on the inside at all, and VCU doesn't either. So that second game, no matter who gets to Iowa in the second round, Garza should have a field day. I would expect 25-10 at the least. So to me, it's a fairly easy road for Iowa to get to the Sweet 16. To that point, I'll make a point as to who they can meet there. But you got anything there, Troy?
Nope. Keep carrying her along, youngster. Keep the show rolling.
All right. So, again, the 3 seed in this region is Kansas. If you get to the Sweet 16 and there's no upsets, the 2 seed plays the 3 seed, the 1 seed plays the 4. So Iowa could get Kansas in the Sweet 16, or the other most likely opponent would be USC, who's the 6th, which Kansas, quote-unquote, should play USC in the second round to see who should play Iowa in the Sweet 16. Kansas this year, they really have not been the Kansas that you're used to knowing Kansas to be. They didn't win the Big 12 regular season, which, that basically never happens. So Baylor did. Kansas does not have a load of NBA players it's just, this is not one of the most fantastic Kansas teams there are. They're a 3 seed for a reason. They're still really good. They're Kansas. They do have NBA bodies. But they're not going to crush everybody by 30 going into the Elite Eight and, are one of the favorites. They're just not. But the last 9 games, they're 8-1. They had to leave during the Big 12 tournament because of a positive COVID test. So they're not going to be, quote-unquote, 100%. They should have basically all their best guys. Come tournament time, especially Sweet 16, that's when you're fast-forwarding another week into the tournament. So they should be fine at that point. But realistically, Kansas, they're really built on their elite defense. They were struggling early this year. Again, 8-1 in the last 9. They were the first team to beat Baylor. So Kansas is for real. They're just not a complete juggernaut that we're used to seeing them being. But defensively, they're fantastic. They hold teams to barely 40% from the field. So Kansas's defense will obviously pose a problem for Iowa. And then if Iowa plays USC, USC has Evan Mobley, who is probably the number 2 pick in the draft. He's a 7-footer who blocks 3 shots a game, but he's a mobile 7-footer. He's an NBA big. He's not a plodding 7-footer. He's not a back-to-the-basket, Luka Garza can shoot from 3, so he's quote-unquote not back to the basket in terms of being a big. He's not Kofi Cockburn for Illinois, but Mobley is just a prototypical NBA big in the sense that he's basically built like Anthony Davis. He's not as good, obviously, as Anthony Davis, but he's of the same build. in terms of stretching the floor, getting up and down. He can really move. So that would be a fantastic matchup to see Mobley and Garza going at it. I don't know if I'm picking USC or Kansas yet. I do think both get past their first game and play each other in the second. But that I really want to see Mobley and Garza. I think that'd be fantastic as far as the matchup is concerned. But, to me at this point, I would favor Iowa to get to at least the Elite Eight and meet up with Gonzaga because, yes, I do think Gonzaga gets to the Elite Eight. I don't think they have problems with anyone from the top. They already beat Virginia, and then you've got a bunch of teams who are, decent, I would say, prior to potentially meeting Virginia. Again, even if Virginia gets there, I don't think Gonzaga has an issue. So that's kind of Iowa's road. You got anything on potentially Kansas, USC, Iowa eventually meeting up with Gonzaga? What are your thoughts, Troy?
Yeah, barring an upset, and I'm not sure how many upsets I'm picking this year, to be honest, youngster. I mean, there's some toss-up games when you look at the bracket as a whole, but in this region, you look at it, I really can't see why Kansas and USC aren't playing each other. And like you said, that will be a good game, that Kansas-USC game. And then, like you said, I think the battle-tested Hawkeyes from the Big Ten are going to get by either one of them, but I think it's going to be a good game. And like you said, either game is going to be a different type dynamic. You could have two bigs going at it, and it's the Garza-Mobley show in one game, or if it's Kansas, you're gonna find out at that point if those four other crap players, and I'm air quoting crap players alongside Garza, are any good.
Yeah.
That'll be the dynamic. So I do think Iowa is going to meet one of those two, and I do think Iowa gets by them because of being battle tested in the Big Ten. So no, I agree with you there. So carry on, youngster.
So yeah, Gonzaga, Iowa in the Elite Eight. I think we both have that. You have Gonzaga in the Elite Eight, I'm assuming, Troy?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So, it should be, quote unquote, should be a rematch from earlier this year. Again, these two teams played in December. I think it was December 15th, so it was obviously super early. In that game, one major thing to note from that game, and this is where you can, make a case that Iowa should not lose by 11 again. Gonzaga shot 50% from three, which obviously is good. Iowa, who's a great three-point shooting team, against Gonzaga, they shot 18% from three. They shot 4 of 22. Bohannon went 0 of 5 from three. Garza,
that's because they got crap players around Garza.
Yeah. Tell Illinois that. Tell, everyone, anyone who played Iowa. So should Iowa shoot 18% from three? Should Gonzaga shoot 50% from three if they meet in the Elite Eight? Neither of those two things should happen. It should even out more so if Iowa doesn't even have an advantage there. So even from the free throw line, Iowa shot 53%. So they just shot like crap. They did. That's just the way it was. Wieskamp shot 50% from the field. He had a good game in this game. And Garza was very effective, 13 of 18 against Timmy. Timmy is the Gonzaga big I mentioned earlier. Timmy only had 15 and 9, but technically sound. As far as footwork and truly being efficient on the block and scoring, they're probably the two best bigs in the country. Just in terms of being on the block and getting it there. I know Coburn physically is just a monster, but in terms of moves to go to in your arsenal to score, Garza's more technically sound than Coburn, and so is Timmy. Those two are just phenomenal offensively on the block. So it would be a great matchup there. Timmy's not as wide. Timmy's not as he's not as thick as Garza. Coburn, certainly not Coburn, but nobody is in terms of Coburn and body type. But yeah, so it would be a great matchup again. But I would not assume that Gonzaga scores 99. I would assume Gonzaga doesn't shoot 50% from three. I'm don't assume that Iowa shoots 18% from three. It would be a great game. To this point, honestly, Troy, I haven't picked it yet. It is Monday morning, but there's no reason to think that Iowa couldn't get to a Final Four.
Yeah, but my gut's telling me Gonzaga's way too good. I mean, we've seen Iowa. We followed them closely. Would it be a major upset in my mind? No, I don't think it would be a major upset. But my gut is telling me on Monday morning, and I'm like you. I go through and I just pick. Like, I picked the brackets last night just because I just picked without doing a lot of thinking, right? Because I wanted to get it on paper. So I had Gonzaga going through. Now I got to take a look a little closer at some more intrinsic things. But I'm looking at Gonzaga. They're really good. They are really good. So I have Gonzaga right now in the Final Four. But, again, I haven't finalized my bracket to this point. But I also look at it. I could see Iowa making a run and getting by Gonzaga because, like you said, they had an anomaly. They had a bad shooting day. Couldn't hit from the outside. When you put it all in Garza's hands, when there's another guy that can be as dominant as him, it's not going to happen for Iowa. They need the other guys to step up and take the pressure off Garza. They didn't do it in the first matchup against Gonzaga. Could it happen again where Gonzaga blows them out? It could. I mean, if they have another bad shooting day. But to me, it was an anomaly when you look at the body of work with Iowa. But those guards have to take the pressure off Garza. They've got to be respectable from three-point land. They don't have to shoot 60%, but they can't shoot 18. If they shoot, 30 to 40%, that takes the pressure off Garza right there, and it makes it a better game. But my gut is telling me on Monday morning that Gonzaga's probably going to make the Final Four, but again, not finalized for me. We got to wrap her up, youngster. What else you got quickly?
No, nothing. That's really it. Again, hopefully these two teams play again. But guard-wise, wing-wise, Gonzaga's they are more talented. And again, Iowa has Wieskamp, who's an NBA guy on the wing, but Gonzaga's got top 5 picks. I mean, at point guard, and their wings are good. So it's Gonzaga holistically is a more talented team than Iowa, but Iowa can certainly shoot their way into scoring 100, just like Gonzaga can. But, yeah, it's a great game. On the face of things, Gonzaga is, quote-unquote, a better team. But should be fun.
All right, youngster, there it was. First of 4 regions. We'll get back at the listeners with another show, and we'll get this out on the gruelingtruth.com. Thank you for listening in on the Interpeak Coffee virtual studio line. For the youngster, I am the old man. Enjoy your day. Good luck picking your brackets, folks. We'll talk to you soon.